Are you suffering from staff turnover? Too many lost business opportunities? Is your reputation at risk? If so, you know your workplace culture needs improvement, but determining how to do so and where to start is about as fun and effective as trying to assemble a puzzle with no picture to guide you. Culture Change in a Box is a show that takes you on a compelling deep dive into an effective real-time culture change process so you can begin to feel hopeful and re-energized about your business. And now, here are your hosts for Culture Change in a Box, Chris McClellan and Judy Ryan.
Well, greetings, everyone. It is Chris McClellan, the Bowtie Guy, for another episode of Culture Change in a Box. And I'm here with my good friend, Judy Ryan from Lifework Systems. Judy, it's great to see you.
It's great to see you, too.
Now, we're not going to let the thunder bothering us today from the outside.
I'm going to predict it's not going to happen.
It's not going to happen, but we're going to have a thunderous conversation today about a topic that I know you're very passionate about, redirecting negative behavior. I know we've touched on this topic previously in some of our podcasts, but I think we're going to dive a little bit deeper.
Yes, we have some really nice comments from actual people that are using this out in the workforce. So redirecting negative behavior is one of our most popular classes for a reason, because I think just about everybody's dealing with somebody that's causing them some grief. So
very much so, but not us currently. Not us currently. We're all on the same page.
Most time. Sometimes. Okay, once in a while.
Except when I'm trying to set up the technology. So, but you go into organizations on a regular basis, and you create conditions that help people help managers, help owners.
Yes. Help them to have ability to cope when there's difficult.
Oh, that's so important.
Because all misbehavior is actually coming from discouragement.
Let me say that all misbehavior is coming from discouragement.
Yes.
Can you talk a little bit about that?
Well, even though some people don't look discouraged when they're misbehaving, they just look mean or arrogant or ignorant or uncaring. It really all comes from the same place of some state of mind where a core need is not being met. So absolutely, that's the stance we help people to take, is if you approach it as if this person is discouraged, it will change the way that you're going to interact with negative behavior.
Do you think, this is just kind of off the top of my head after listening to your great explanation, or do you think people recognize internally that they're not being encouraged?
No. In fact, I don't myself even. Every once in a while, I'll catch myself in a mistaken goal, kind of a little bit like just a second ago I did it. Oh my gosh, and I didn't realize I was discouraged. And often if I recognize that I'm misbehaving, and especially if somebody calls me on it, I recognize it, then I can usually trace back, where was I discouraged? What happened? I remember one time I just became aware I was in a mistaken goal, and I thought, I remember exactly where I got discouraged this morning at a meeting, and then this happened. But I wasn't consciously aware that it had affected me. Goodness.
So can you talk a little bit more about those people who challenge us with their poor behavior?
Yes. And I think what's really tricky is sometimes when we're teaching this in a workplace, people are surprised to find out the various faces of misbehavior. So the more obvious face of misbehavior is active destructive. That's when somebody's doing something and it's very evident that they're actually causing harm or discouragement to another person or property.
Active destructive.
Active destructive. And we all know a little bit more easily how to recognize passive destructive.
Right. That came right to my mind when you mentioned that.
Because that's that person who's slacking off and isn't doing their work, and it's very obvious that it's destructive or wasteful in some way. But the ones that are harder to identify are the active constructive and the passive constructive. So these are things like somebody that maybe is running themselves ragged at work. They look like the hardest worker on the team, but they're not quite delivering good customer service or taking care of themselves. Everyone else is trying to support them and often enabling them, but they sure look good, like they're really trying, right? But they're not managing something well, and it's actually causing a lot of problems, and it's causing this person to underperform, for example. Or a more active constructive misbehavior would be somebody that finds a way to ingratiate themselves in a meeting where it looks like they did all the work, but they're really undercutting other people while they're doing that. So they look like the good guy when in reality...
wearing the white hat.
Yes. So those are things that people, when they're first learning them, they don't always recognize the importance of them till later we can say, did you notice how that behavior was passive constructive? And they're like, I can see it now. but they wouldn't have recognized it otherwise.
Very much so. So I know you've talked before maybe about forms of misbehavior.
Yeah, so those actually are the forms, but I want to talk to you a little bit about the goals of misbehavior. Mm-hmm. So the goals of misbehavior are, well, first of all, there's 5 of them, and they evoke 5 very distinctively different kinds of feelings in us. And that's kind of the difficulty about redirect, is that some people really don't even know what they're feeling, so that's a difficulty for them, because how you feel helps you identify the misbehavior pattern that another person's in. So it's a little bit like going to the eye doctor. You know how the eye doctor says, is this lens better or is it this lens?
Great analogy.
They're very, very subtle differences. Yeah. So, for example, a lot of women, they may be provoked to anger, but because it's not sugar and spice to be angry, they'll say, well, I'm annoyed. But they're saying they're annoyed with steam coming out of their ears, right? Right. Mm-hmm. And the same with maybe a man who feels hurt, and it's not as conditionally acceptable for a man to say, that really hurt. So first you have to be able to be honest with yourself about what is the emotion that is occurring right now, because it is a diagnostic tool to determine whether a person's in a goal of attention, power, revenge, inadequacy, or significance. And so the importance of knowing those is the same as if you went to a doctor with a sore throat and he says, well, I'm just going to give you some antibiotics. Well, that would be fine if you have strep throat. But if you had just been to the Cardinal game, or you had an allergy, or you had a fishbone stuck in your throat, or something different than an infection, it would actually be harmful for him to give you that. So understanding the goals behind misbehavior, how, in a sense, how kind of crazy they are.
Sure.
So, for example, almost everybody can recognize this goal that I'm going to share with you. It's called the goal of significance. And it's the kind of person that when they walk in the room, the thoughts you're thinking are, who died made you God, right? So you just feel.
I might have done that once or twice.
And they have, you start having a feeling of inadequacy, or feeling like somebody's squashing you, or something like that kind of feeling of, well, gosh, who does he think he is? And when that feeling's going on, that mistaken goal does not look very discouraged, but it is a mistaken goal where the person in that goal actually believes they're not enough. Mm-hmm. So they use their misbehavior in a puffing up activity, as opposed to another goal where they shrink down. So do you mind if we go ahead and...
Go for it.
Okay, so we have a person from one of our client sites who actually shared a story. She's a coding and compliance manager and was having an exchange with a physician who was in the goal of significance. And this is what she has to say.
Let's take a listen.
I was having a difficult time getting through to one of the physicians that I work with closely. I had to present some pretty difficult information to him, and I had later found out, was in the goal of significance, and he wanted to power over me and use this very puffed up image that he was a physician and he knew better, even though what he was talking about maybe wasn't necessarily related to what I was trying to get across to him about his coding. And so I was able to work with him and use the redirect tool on him so that he could gain a better understanding of where I was coming from. And now he's a team player. He sees that I'm on his side and I'm just trying to help him and help improve his overall documentation and coding strategy. So all in all, it worked. It was great. It was nice to practice first before I went in, because it was a little nerve-wracking trying to talk to a physician about something so delicate. But once he saw that we were on the same team and we all had the same goal, it was a much different story. The way I would have handled it previously, without knowing what redirect even is I would have gone in and told him this is how it is and tried to puff myself up and make myself seem like, no, I know what I'm talking about. And I would have walked away and we wouldn't have come to any sort of agreement or solution. We would have left it as that we were both right in what we said and nothing would have gotten better. But previously, in my meetings with him before Redirect or before Lifeworks in general, I always walked away so upset and so discouraged in every meeting. And now he really relies on me to give him the best feedback that I can. He sees me as a trusted team member. We have a great relationship now.
Boy, what a great example.
Yeah, I love that one. And it's so common for us sometimes when somebody has that title and they're in this goal, it's even more complicated in our minds anyway.
Yeah, and the thought that was coming to my mind as I was listening to that wonderful example was the struggles that some people have dealing with authority.
Yes.
And how some of that can be easily worked out just with some great communication tools.
Well, that was a great example because in some senses he was an authority to her.
Sure,
he was her customer. He had this, esteem of being a physician. Mm-hmm. But regardless, if he had been in an encouraged state, he wouldn't be handling things the way he was. Mm-hmm. So the fact that she could come at it from a completely different angle, which was counterintuitive to her. It's sort of like that thing we do when a dog comes racing up to us. If we aren't trained properly, we're going to run. But if we're trained properly, we're going to stop and calm our body, right?
That's another great example.
Yeah. So redirect is a little bit like that, where your first instinct, you want to kind of stop before you enter it.
And I guess as I'm thinking out loud here, I bet some of these tools, probably all of these tools, are essential for home life as well.
They definitely are. We do actually have a division for education and family. And when we teach these programs, especially redirect, when we teach it in corporate settings, people are always saying to us, this is helping me at home with my 2-year-old or my 17-year-old. And when we're teaching it in parenting programs or education programs, people are saying, this is really helping me with my coworkers or my next door neighbor or my priest or whoever. So there are lots of ways to apply pretty much everything we teach because it's human systems.
Human systems.
So we do have some more clips
of
a couple different people talking about that.
Yeah, this has changed my home life a lot. I love that the model works in every instance where there's a team or a mentor or a teaching relationship. So if I'm a coach, I'm a manager at work, I'm a parent at home, and it's been incredible, especially for my kids. I already knew a little bit about the philosophy before Lifeworks came on board at work, and it was astonishing because I thought, oh my gosh, I know how well this works with my kids, even the little bits that I can do with it. So to have a clear model and some checklists and some coaching has improved my entire life, everything.
We've got another one.
I've seen great strides in my personal life with my children. It's been an area of frustration. One child is just turned 5, another is just turned 3. And I've seen a lot of these skills really positively helping our children communicate and verbalize, especially at an early age. Lifework Skills and Tools has helped me realize that I was lacking in certain areas of communication. These communication skills, I believe, should be incorporated in early childhood development. And it's really something that our culture in America as well as globally should incorporate.
God, I just love that, Judy. Goodness, that is just terrific. We've got one more, too.
It's funny. It does make my life better at work and at home. I don't think you can have an improvement at home that doesn't affect your job or an improvement on the job that doesn't affect your home life. I've shared a lot of my learning with my husband, and he has now often referred back to Lifeworks, and he will ask me sometimes if I'm in the goal of, or he'll say, "You're using that Lifeworks on me now, aren't you?" And it's kind of nice, but it's definitely improved my life at work because I feel so much better about approaching a coworker, about something that I would have let continue to bug me. And now you discover that those little things, you can go ahead and say something and it's okay.
Well, there's so much material here from these 3 wonderful examples, but I think the last lady really hit home when her husband redirected.
Yes, when she says, "Are you doing the goal of?"
Are you good? I think That is just terrific because it demonstrates, it's a real life demonstration how this actually works.
Yes. And it is something that people do share with one another, and they can have a common language and tools outside of the workplace as well as in. When he says that to her, are you in the goal of, what he's referring to are those 5 mistaken goals. And one of the things, to just kind of give you a little example of what some of the terms are in redirect, I'm going to just give you a story about one of the mistaken goals, because there's a guy that's going to talk a little bit about that story and how that affected him.
Okay.
One of the mistaken goals is called the goal of attention. And it's the goal in which you probably experience people where you're on the phone or you're doing something and you can feel their energy just hovering, and you just feel like there's a fly that you want to swat, right? Because don't you see I'm busy? Go away, and you just feel annoyed. It's not a terrible feeling, but it's kind of a mild feeling, right? Well, there was a mom one time when I was a young mom. I had 4 children at that point, and she had 3. So here we had 7 kids under 7 altogether. And one of them, little Robert, kept coming up to her, and he'd say, "Mommy, I'm hungry. Can I have something to eat?" And she'd go, "Robert, we're going to eat lunch later. Go play." And all right. And he would walk away, and then he'd come back and he'd want something else. And this went on, and she kept stopping to talk to him. And she finally got really frustrated and said, "I'm probably going to have to go. He always does this. He always drives me crazy. I really don't know what else to do with him. I've tried bribing him. I've tried spanking him. I've done all these things, and I just can't seem to stop this behavior." And I said, "Well, I'm teaching these classes. Do you mind if I give you an idea?" And she said, "Absolutely." And so I said, when Robert comes up, the next time, I want you to relax your body. I want you to think the thoughts as sincerely as you can. I know you're there and I love you, and I'm so glad you're here with me. I want you to think that thought. And as he comes over close to you, I just want you to put your arm gently on his shoulder, but I don't want you to look at him, and I don't want you to say anything to him. And see what happens. And so sure enough, he comes up and he wants something, and she doesn't say anything. And I also told her, if he gets louder, just continue, but make sure your thinking is, I know you're there and I love you, and just keep your body as relaxed as you can. So sure enough, he comes up and he starts to do his thing. And then he kind of looks at her when she doesn't give him the usual behavior, which is looking at him and saying something to him, which we call the sugar. It'd be like giving somebody an indulgence, right? Like, give me a cookie. Okay, here you go. So she's not giving him the sugar. So he kind of wandered off, like, what just happened? I said, now he's going to probably come back, because this is a regular pattern, and he's going to up the ante, what we call up the ante. You're breaking through a limiting belief that he's operating right now, that he has to have attention to be happy. And so when he comes up, he's going to get worse.
Right.
And sure enough, he comes up and he's like pulling on her arm, and he's trying to get in her face. And eventually he calms down, and she's just kind of cradling him in her arms as she's continuing the conversation with me. And then he went away, and he didn't come back. He just played with the other kids. And after a while, she hears him laughing, and she goes, how did you know that would work? So that's what it means to be in the goal of, is understanding what particular form of misbehavior is happening so that you can be effective in the way that you would manage it. So we do have a little clip on a father who just appreciated this example of the attention goal.
Well, let's play it.
Okie doke.
I think the training sessions, I enjoyed the little video clips. I remember the one about the little boy coming up and interrupting the mom constantly, and I think a lot of people don't know what to do about that situation, and it is true. Don't give them the sugar by stopping and letting them interrupt. Just tousle their hair, grab them, hug them, put them in a bear hug or whatever while you continue to talk to the adult. And to me, that was just one of the most perfect examples I've ever seen of that's the way you do it. I think I'd inadvertently done that, but this was a great framework and a great way to relay this to a lot of younger people with kids. And I think the other thing is you have to do it with employees too, because sometimes you can be on the phone or doing a job and somebody wants to just constantly interrupt you. You can't give them their sugar, meaning the thing that will make them go, this is how I get my attention. So I thought that was really good.
Oh, goodness, I'm never going to look at sugar the same. That is fascinating.
Yeah. So he also mentions that you got to learn how to do this with the coworkers too, because it's not just children that misbehave this way.
Very much so.
Yeah, redirect is a very powerful tool. It does take a little getting used to it, and so we recommend that people do specialized practice sessions on them.
Right.
We have in our client sites, we have every single person in the organization gets mentored, and in the mentoring process, there's not generally time to do the practice of redirect. Sometimes there can be, but we know people really love it. It is a big game changer for people, so we recommend that they partner up with someone. We have the information on a phone app for them so that they can really so that it becomes second nature to recall it.
They can just look at it right on the app.
Yeah, they can look at it on the app, and then eventually they don't even need the app. That's when you're really using
that's when
it. It's ingrained. You can almost do it.
But I've got to go back to the sugar comment because it just makes so much sense, because it's easier to give something to somebody to make something go away.
Yes.
But it really never goes away. It just keeps coming back, and it just gets bigger and bigger and bigger until the issue is dealt with directly.
Yeah, and even when we deal with it directly, like if I were to have a gun and pointed at you and I said, now, if you cross your legs, I'm going to shoot you, and you thought I would, it would work, right? So sometimes we deal with misbehavior directly, but we're using methods that have terrible side effects to them. So you want to, people need to know rewarding and bribing and punishing all quote unquote work, but at what cost? So in the redirecting negative behavior, the thing we're teaching people is that if somebody's misbehaving, they're operating out of a limiting, fearful belief. And if you give them the sugar, it's as if you're feeding that belief.
You're feeding it.
Yeah, and it not only feeds it in the other person, it feeds that same belief in yourself. So when you break the cycle of a misbehaving goal, you're breaking it within yourself as well. Does that make sense?
It does, very much so. Goodness. So we've got a couple more examples.
Okay.
You ready?
Mm-hmm. So the biggest challenge that I had so far is really picking the right tool for the need, for the relationship, whatever is happening. Because there's so many tools that we learn, and I'm very analytical, so I read into tools way too much. So I usually find someone maybe someone who's more of a social person to kind of really pick those and kind of discuss it. So just picking the right tool for the job. I've overcome that, and really the tool that I use the most out of everything is the redirecting negative behavior, because it's a self-check of where I'm at. Until I can figure out where I'm at, I really can't help better that relationship, is what I found. So I had a really challenging relationship through the first year and a half that I worked here. It happened to be one of my peers that I worked with, so it was just very challenging. Just day-to-day operations and stuff were challenging. So we have mentoring sessions, and we get to rate where our relationships are without saying names, without saying specifics. And I really, after quite a few of those and kind of talking about it, I really took time to reflect and drill down into the relationship. And I used the redirecting negative behavior tool that we learned. And I really learned that myself, had quite a bit of negative behavior with it. So I learned how to change my mindset. I learned how to see value in the person, what they brought to the team, and really they were really capable, and I just had to empower them. I had to give them a little responsibility and ask for a plan of action and for their help. And once I did that, it really changed the relationship.
Goodness, I got to interject something here, because he said something very important when he said the word empower.
Yes.
Because sometimes we need that, and we need the internal permission to empower not only ourselves, but the other person that we're dealing with.
And especially in that mistaken goal, he had to have been describing somebody in an inadequacy goal. But what I also heard was the humility that he had.
That came through so vividly.
You could see he needed to redirect himself first, right? And also, the thing about the story is he said that he was in a problem with this person for the first year that he had known this person. So that's a lot of stress and strain, and to have that off your back.
And just think about going to work for an entire year with a negative impression about a coworker, a situation. What does that do to your own well-being?
Yeah, I believe that a lot of those relationship issues accumulate, and then people
festers.
Yeah, they become less engaged. Even if they're physically present, they're just not as plugged into their jobs because they've got that weight of the negative behaviors.
So we got a couple of more we want to play, and then I've got a final question.
I think the most challenging for me was redirect, because I feel like I'm not someone who really likes to have confrontation with people or to really tell them what I'm truly thinking. Being open and honest with someone and trying to get them to better understand and better meet a result that you would like is difficult for me. It's not my initial jerk reaction to different situations. So trying to reprogram my brain to take a step back and really understand what I'm feeling before I react is something that was very, very difficult for me. But through practice and consistent practice and training sessions and real life scenarios, it's just become almost second nature.
And we've got one final one.
Mm-hmm. My best Lifework Systems aha was when, I guess it was in redirecting negative behavior. When someone's in the goal of significance or in power, like I always take things so personally. And when we were going through that session, I really realized that it's not about me and it's not directed toward me. And so I'm able to help people who are in those mistaken goals to redirect their behavior, and we can actually have an effective communication.
This is just off the charts. Goodness.
Yeah, I love what she said about how easy it is to take things personally when somebody's misbehaving. There are two of the mistaken goals in particular that I think are very easy to take personally. And one is the revenge goal. And revenge goal does not mean it's somebody out to get you per se. Mm-hmm. Revenge goal is actually somebody that's deeply in shame over pain that they're going through.
Oh,
and so they're prickly. So the things they do feel like attacks. And it's very easy to feel shocked by them and hurt by them, like if somebody was zinging you with a little cow prod or something, right? Mm-hmm. So just the understanding that it's not about you and really getting that is so helpful to people because it wastes so much energy defending ourselves. The other one is the goal of significance, where that person just feels like they got a thumb on your head holding you down. Mm-hmm. And it's difficult not to remember, this isn't about me. This other person's in a bad place right now.
So we just got a couple of minutes left in our show today. So I don't know if we could have this in just 2 minutes, but why is it important for people to learn to redirect?
I think that until we find harmless ways to help people to become good citizens, we will continue to end up with war. We'll continue to end up with all kinds of division. I'm right, you're wrong, I'm right. You know, that kind of battling going on where we aren't treating ourselves and each other in ways that actually bring the best out in each other. So redirect is a harmless and a productive way to turn negative behavior around so that it actually becomes in service to good rather than just pushed underground.
Judy, it's great to do these shows with you.
Thank you.
I'm learning a lot about my behavior as we go through this, and I hope our listeners are too.
Yeah, me too.
So how can people find you?
You can come to our website, www.lifeworksystems.com, or you can call us at 314-239-4727. If you are interested in a redirecting negative behavior program, you can go to getmytrainingspecials.com. Getmytrainingspecials.com.
I tell you, you've got it going on.
Thanks, Chris.
Oh, goodness. Okay, that does it for this episode of Culture Change in a Box. I'm Chris McClellan, the Bowtie Guy. I am creating a life to love by being with awesome people like Judy Ryan. Culture Change in a Box is part of the Whole Care Network. Check us out online at wholecarenetwork.com. We'll see you for another episode real soon. Bye-bye.